I switched itineraries on a trip. My friends yelled and berated me on a plane, leaving me in tears and questioning our friendship. Hello, everyone. I am using a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My story is lengthy, and I apologize for that, but everything I discuss is relevant to the situation. I would truly value honest advice and would like to know if I am in the wrong. Here it is: I am a 21-year-old female, and I have had friendships with two girls, whom I will refer to as Faith and Mia, since high school. We recently took a 5-day trip together. It was my first trip abroad, but not theirs. On the first day, I created an itinerary to explore our destination, but during our cab ride to the airport, Mia presented her own itinerary. Mia was very enthusiastic, so I decided to set mine aside and join her plans since there were some overlapping activities. Mia included a trip to the beach on day 3, but I am not fond of beaches. Nonetheless, I thought it would be fine to go with my friends, and we would have fun regardless. After arriving, we settled into our rented Airbnb. I paid the deposit of approximately $200. Following a brief exploration of the nearby area and some grocery shopping, we went to bed early. I wanted to rise early the next day to explore and accomplish our plans, so I asked if we could be ready by 9 a.m. for a fun day. Faith and Mia complimented my French skills, and I jokingly claimed that I had taken some French classes in college, as we were in a French-speaking country, but I exaggerated and was merely kidding. This detail is significant. On day 2, we intended to visit an old cathedral and an architectural site, according to Mia's itinerary. We spent most of the day exploring the architectural site, and by the time Faith got hungry, we went out to eat around 3:00 p.m. We did not return to visit the cathedral. The city was stunning, and after lunch, I decided that I would prefer to continue exploring the city rather than go to the beach. I expressed my desire to explore the city, stating that they could go to the beach if they wished, and I would meet up with them afterward. Faith became extremely upset with me and scolded me in a loud and disrespectful manner, nearly shouting. She claimed I should have voiced my thoughts earlier, which, to her credit, I should have, but I was okay with going to the beach until I realized how beautiful the city was and wanted to see more. And she found it ridiculous for me to suggest that we split up since we were on a trip together as a trio. I struggle with confrontation and experience significant anxiety, which I do not disclose to people as I feel embarrassed about my struggles. So when confronted, especially in a rude manner and in public, I tend to become silent. This is particularly true if a friend is the one confronting me. I typically remain quiet for a few hours, though I do respond when spoken to, but I refrain from starting any conversations because I am still affected by the disrespectful behavior. In the evening, Faith apologized, and I accepted. On day 3, they decided against going to the beach altogether since we could not separate. They wanted to sleep in, and Faith suggested waking up at 5 p.m. I was not keen on this idea at all, but since I felt I was on thin ice with them after expressing my preference to skip the beach, I kept quiet. We ended up leaving at 3 p.m., which left us with very little time to explore the cathedral, as it closes early. There was a square I had wanted to see, so we walked there, stood in the dark for about 5 minutes, and then returned. I mentioned wanting to come back later, and Mia said we could revisit it before heading to the airport. When we returned to the Airbnb, Mia expressed her wish for us to visit another city, which was part of her original itinerary. We attempted to make arrangements, but Mia revealed for the first time that it would cost an additional $100. As a college student, I am quite broke, and $100 felt excessive for a day trip within the same country. I asked to reconsider. Ultimately, we agreed to pay $50, still a steep price, but I did not want to complain further, to visit a coastal city, leaving early the next morning. Mia also expressed her excitement about my college French classes, and I reminded her I was joking. Most of my French knowledge comes from textbooks or online sources. This detail is also significant. On day 4, we took a bus to our destination. For context, I brought headphones on the trip, but I only used them on days 4 and 5. On day 4, I took them out because we had a 3-hour bus ride, and I wanted to listen to music or perhaps a podcast. Upon arriving, we began walking to the beach. Although I was not particularly interested in going, I chose to comply to avoid further conflict after the previous fallout. After walking for about 40 minutes, I decided to put in my headphones during the final stretch. I typically wear them above my ears so I can still hear others and engage in conversation while enjoying some music. However, Mia and Faith reprimanded me, stating it was rude, and I understand their perspective now. I disagreed, arguing I could still hear and talk to them. I merely wanted to enjoy some music. Furthermore, Faith wears her AirPods daily, but she claims she isn't playing anything, so it's different. Ultimately, we spent 3 hours at the beach doing little aside from playing card games. Afterward, we returned to the Airbnb, cleaned up, and went to bed as we had a flight the next day. On day 5, we visited the town square, and Mia was equally enthusiastic. We checked out early and had a secure location to leave our luggage. However, I did not want to leave my valuables, phone, passport, headphones, so I carried them with me. While we walked, Mia asked about our controversial opinions, and we started discussing various topics. During a debate, she abruptly told me to stop talking. I found this offensive and informed her, to which she replied that she had only asked for a single controversial opinion, not a multitude. What was I supposed to say to that? To her credit, she did apologize, but I remained quiet. I engaged in conversation and responded, but I struggled to participate fully because I was still taken aback by her abruptness. We continued walking, taking photos, but I remained silent. Faith noticed my discomfort and acknowledged that Mia had upset me, prompting me to address it. I explained to Faith that there was nothing to discuss, there simply wasn't. She reluctantly offered an apology, and that was the end of it. We then traveled to the airport, caught our flight, and while seated together, we began playing cards. However, things took a turn when I remarked that Faith was taking the game too seriously, triggering an unexpected reaction from her: the fallout. Faith then began yelling at me in front of a plane full of passengers, accusing me of acting immature, claiming she had to follow me around, and stating that her apology on day 2 was her way of being the bigger person. I didn't have the chance to respond. Instead, she shouted for me to be quiet. Mia was seated between us and did not intervene in any way. I turned to look out the window and shed a few tears. I put on my headphones and read for the duration of the flight, which was 3 hours. Throughout the flight, Faith made no effort to apologize, and Mia did not check on me. Upon landing, I informed Mia that I intended to go home alone rather than with everyone else, but I would say goodbye to her. Mia urged me to speak with Faith, mentioning that Faith had cried after yelling at me and would not do so if she didn't care. She told me that Faith wanted to apologize. I told Mia that I couldn't be friends with someone who yelled and demeaned me on a plane full of people, and I pointed out that Faith had 3 full hours to apologize, plus the time it took to reach passport control and exit the airport. Mia insisted I should give Faith a chance. We boarded our train home and Faith sought a seat. I chose not to sit with her and Mia stood by my side. That's when Mia began yelling at me. She shouted, accusing me of talking down to them throughout the trip, being arrogant and acting superior. I was completely confused and asked her to clarify. I also told her to lower her voice. She stated that I tend to over-explain things, which she perceives as condescending. To clarify, I am quite nerdy, and if someone mentions a topic I enjoy, I tend to elaborate if I get excited. I have been like this since high school. Note: after this incident, I consulted my college friends and others to ask if they perceived me as condescending or arrogant in my speech, and not a single one indicated I am, at all. Mia yelled at me for wanting to end my friendship with Faith because it's a 3-way friendship, so her opinion matters. She expressed frustration that I go quiet when I have an issue, and I explained that it is because I often don't know how to respond. I tend to overthink when silent, and that my anxiety inhibits me from comfortably voicing my thoughts following a disagreement. In response, she shouted aggressively and told me to not dare put that on her. She also claimed that she and Faith had discussed many of their issues with me, asserting it wasn't just her. I was shocked. I never imagined they would talk about me behind my back and hold on to it for days instead of addressing me directly. But they did. So I approached Faith's seat to understand what was happening. Meanwhile, Mia kept yelling. She claimed that I was so arrogant that I fabricated a fake qualification for myself, the French college classes, just to justify looking down on her. This accusation was utterly unfounded. It was merely a poorly timed joke, but she clearly holds a low opinion of me to assume such a thing. Mia also suggested I must believe they are foolish because I do not speak to my sisters or college friends in that manner. She has neither met my college friends nor observed my interactions with my sisters. This was entirely conjecture. Faith accused me of being selfish and inconsiderate, saying that everything done during the trip was intended to make me happy, especially after I initially declined to go to the beach, which I later chose to do. They asserted that I brought my headphones on days 4 and 5 with the intention of ignoring them, and they deemed it rude for me to wear them during the walk, something I admitted was indeed inconsiderate. I attempted to speak, even apologizing for wasting their time and for making them feel belittled, but Mia cut me off angrily, claiming that I did not genuinely mean my apologies and lacked empathy. I struggled to get a word in. The train ride lasted almost an hour, with them spending it yelling at me. I sought to clarify things, but Mia dismissed my attempts, stating it was a monologue and stage and lights. I disembarked the train feeling defeated, having apologized repeatedly, and Faith offered a half-hearted apology for shouting at me. Mia then switched gears. She suggested that we should just forget the entire ordeal and be friends again. At that moment, after feeling attacked and shouted at, I acquiesced. I apologized once more, even offering to refund their trip as I felt I had ruined it, while tearing up. Mia remarked that it wasn't fair for me to receive recognition for crying while they had to acknowledge it. I told her that she still has every right to feel upset. They then stated that they were only sharing their feelings with me for my benefit because no one else would do so, and they did not want others to think poorly of me and fail to communicate their concerns. Mia began expressing that she believes I am superior to her, which seemed contradictory given her earlier accusations of arrogance, and she appreciated my tendency to over-explain and talk a lot, asserting that people today often struggle with communication. I returned home feeling confused, sad, and exhausted. It took a few days for me to realize I did not deserve this treatment whatsoever. Consequently, I notified them that I did not wish to continue our friendship. Mia replied with an apology, expressing understanding, but added that Faith had tolerated much of my behavior during the trip, and she intended to offer advice because no one else would, and they would only treat me poorly like the bullies in school. I experienced severe bullying. Faith was upset, claiming that she had shown kindness toward me, asserting that she cared more for me than Mia did, and was baffled that I would end our friendship over something so trivial, insisting I could not comprehend having done anything wrong. I am left bewildered. Please, can anyone clarify my wrongdoings and whether I truly deserved this treatment from my friends because of my actions? Thank you for taking the time to read this lengthy post. Story 2. I clicked a link that ruined my rep, got blackmailed into cheating, lost my girlfriend, and found out who my real friends were. I, 19 years old, male, used to be in a relationship with a girl several years ago, same age. Let's refer to her as Gemma, a pseudonym. Our relationship lasted nearly 4 years and concluded with me losing most of my friends. We were quite close. We were familiar with each other's families and embodied that typical teenage couple, even though we refrained from public displays of affection. Given her religious beliefs, she is Muslim, and my atheism, I am Asian. Her family found it challenging to accept me initially, and her parents were frequently opposed to our relationship. The situation escalated when, one day, an individual, who I still do not know, pretending to be my friend, sent me a link that granted them access to my social media. I am unsure how it functioned, but they obtained my Instagram login credentials and saved images of her in compromising positions. I do not know how long they accessed my account since I remained logged in. They intimidated me into severing my connection with her because they desired her for themselves and threatened to make these images public to tarnish her reputation, which would result in her parents forcibly ending our relationship, regardless. At that time, I believed this person must have had some information about her, either from knowing her personally or through someone else. They would send me images weekly of Gemma's house. It sounds foolish, but I did not want to frighten her, so she remained unaware of this, as she was generally quite anxious. I maintained a friendship with my ex, and I engaged in some physical interactions prior to the relationship, which I never disclosed to Gemma. This anonymous individual seemingly knew about that period of intimate interactions that occurred before my relationship with Gemma, and they coerced me into arranging a day to betray my girlfriend, aiming to sever our ties and eliminate any connections between us. I was unsure what to do, because approaching anyone would risk exposing the images to the public. My feelings for her were genuine, so I would rather damage my own reputation than hers. I ultimately made the difficult decision to comply. This situation affected me deeply because my father had cheated on my mother, who raised me as a single parent, and I witnessed the pain and suffering that resulted. It shattered me to betray Gemma. I was immature and emotionally withdrew. The anonymous individual took control of my messages, making me communicate as though nothing had occurred. Unfortunately, I had not established a coded signal with that ex to indicate that something was wrong. The anonymous person pressured me not to inform her for several days, waiting for my ex to feel guilty and suggest that I proceed. I still wonder if he knew her personally. Throughout this period, I attempted to investigate the account, looking into its followers and those they were following. Some of them were from my school, while others were from nearby institutions, and they were not random. All of them appeared to be associated with gangs. I inquired among some acquaintances if they knew who managed the account, but they claimed to have simply followed it randomly in a follow-for-follow scheme. This left me with no leads. After those days passed, I came clean to her after my ex encouraged me to, and what followed devastated me. Gemma was not an angry or spiteful person, at least based on her responses. She expressed disappointment in me for sinking so low. I spent weeks in turmoil while continuing my investigation into this anonymous account but found no answers. I couldn't seek help from others, as I didn't know whom to trust. Additionally, I was hesitant to ask for assistance, having been raised with the belief that one should handle it yourself, heavily influenced by social media. We decided together to keep the incident confidential, as revealing it would damage her reputation and reinforce the narrative that her boyfriend had cheated. As expected, Gemma ended our relationship, but we will continue to use the names Gemma and X. Eventually, my ex divulged the situation to our friend group, and when I questioned her about it, she ignored my message. This resulted in my friends discovering the issue, and without asking for my perspective, they distanced themselves from me. They had been my closest friends at the time. Shouldn't they have sought my viewpoint? I doubt it would have made much difference, as I couldn't provide any details about the anonymous individual. This experience shattered me because they were the people I felt closest to, yet they genuinely believed that I would betray my first true love. I realize how absurd and cliché that sounds now. However, I understand how people feel when someone truly cheats on their partner. I genuinely look down on those individuals for lacking faithfulness and not aligning with my values. What angered me, though, was that they did not defend me, nor did they question the validity of the claim. They simply accepted it. One friend ghosted me entirely, while another stated that since both his friend, Gemma, and the friend who ghosted me felt uncomfortable remaining friends with me, he didn't believe he should either. Despite this, all three were wonderful individuals, intelligent, motivated, and shared my interests. The anonymous individual provided me with a drive containing images of her, which I deleted, and soon after they removed their account. I don't know if that drive was genuine or what it consisted of. Perhaps they still possessed leverage over me at that point, so I chose not to return and tell everyone that it had all been a fabrication. Who would believe me? This person contacted me and then deleted their message. I can anticipate the comments questioning why I did not take screenshots as evidence, but I had no idea just how extensively they had compromised my accounts or devices. Back then, phishing, as I believe it's called, was unfamiliar to me. 2 years later, I ceased my investigations due to constant dead ends. I did manage to obtain their email address, but it was deleted shortly after the incident. I concluded that the individual was somehow gang-affiliated, which was a predicament for a small Asian boy like me to confront directly if I even found them. They had connections to people in my school, and even at Gemma's new school after she transferred a year or two into our relationship. They lived nearby, too. However, I ultimately could not cope with the stress it caused and opted to delete all my social media, starting fresh without the necessity to prove my innocence, as I realized it would not bring her back to me. Her trust in me had already been irrevocably harmed. To this day, I remain uncertain if the images were removed entirely, but I hope they never resurface. It was time for me to move on. They had consumed 2 years of my life already. Prolonging this suffering served no purpose, or at least that's what I told myself. Only recently, one of the friends I thought I had distanced himself from me due to that incident from years ago, literally waiting until I graduated to express discomfort about being friends, because he wavered due to that event. Why would you maintain a friendship for years, only to walk away over something that occurred in the past? I finally decided to share this because I became busy, but I still have not disclosed this experience to anyone except my sister. I doubt anyone close to me would be the anonymous individual, but I have since shifted my focus to who my true friends are, as they would at least consider my perspective. Assuming they are reasonable and rational individuals, my frustration is clear. Of course, I do not feel innocent. I could have taken action. I can't say what exactly, but something could have changed. However, back then, I lacked knowledge about how to navigate these situations. I have damaged her trust and caused her trauma and trust issues for life because of that relationship. All I can hope for now is that she finds someone who is truly caring and understanding and helps her heal from this experience, just like before it occurred. I feel it is entirely my fault. If I had never clicked on that harmful link or had sought assistance back then, the outcome might have been different. It took me months to regain a sense of normalcy in my life. I spent weeks in despair, with swollen eyes, and even my family offered me comfort. Foolishly, I also tried the strategy that to get over someone, you need to find someone else. I abandoned that idea since it yielded no results. Nevertheless, there was a friend who supported me throughout this trying time. Although I have not yet informed him what truly transpired, he remained by my side due to his belief that I could change. I value him more than he realizes. So there was a somewhat positive conclusion to this narrative. I discovered numerous new hobbies and made some friends along the way. However, I still struggle to forge deep friendships. My current best friend, the one who stood by me throughout this ordeal, recently invited me to his sister's wedding, and I had a wonderful time getting acquainted with his family. I am straight, in case this might imply otherwise. At present, I am managing 2 businesses, which occupy most of my time, and I am striving to learn as much as possible. My past reputation does resurface among my old friends, naturally. Still, I believe I have learned a great deal from these experiences and from Gemma. She taught me how to love, behave appropriately, and I will always hold her in high regard, wishing her the very best. If you have read this far, I appreciate your attention, and I hope you can learn from my experience. The lessons I have drawn from this are: never share images that include your face if you are engaged in questionable activities. Seek help when necessary, even if it may hurt. It facilitates the expulsion of negative influences from your life sooner. Be cautious about trusting others, as you cannot be certain if they are faking their friendship. I believe there is someone out there for everyone, and there are plenty of potential partners, so be open to new connections. When dating someone of a different religion, strive to learn a bit about their language and culture to impress their family. Learn, adapt, and evolve. I apologize if my English is poor. It is my second language, though I have lived in Australia for most of my life. Story 3. After 2 years, my boyfriend broke up with me suddenly. A month later, I realized I can live without him, but I'm falling for other men. My boyfriend and I have been in a relationship for 2 years, and a few months ago, he unexpectedly ended things with me. Since our separation, everything has changed, and it feels like our 2 years together were not genuine, as he concealed feelings that could cause him pain. I discovered that he has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and many of his behaviors were sometimes frustrating for me, which he would perceive as a personal attack. He often suppressed his feelings, choosing not to share them until it was frequently too late, even revealing details after we had been together for 2 years. Throughout this time, he continuously expressed his love for me and his desire to marry me, right up until the week preceding our breakup. He struggles with accepting criticism, making it difficult for me to voice my frustrations when he would do something upsetting without him taking it too personally, despite my reassurances. I constantly felt the need to tread carefully around him. We discussed everything, and it turned out that most of our issues stemmed from misunderstandings and miscommunications. We attempted couples therapy to resolve our problems, but it proved challenging to rebuild our former selves in the few weeks leading up to a year-long long-distance relationship we had planned. During our breakup, he made several statements that were ultimately very unfair, a sentiment shared by our therapist. After our conversation, he regretted his hasty decision and wanted to reconcile just 2 days later. In therapy, it became apparent that many of his unhealthy patterns, such as struggling to accept criticism without thinking I was attacking him, his tendency to become angry over issues he never communicated, bottling up feelings, failing to express concerns even when I inquired, and inadequately handling tough conversations were largely rooted in his upbringing. These issues have significantly affected our relationship. Although he has since apologized, I still do not feel the same connection to him. It seems that the 2 years we spent together, which I believed were happy and fulfilling, may not have been genuine. Every time he mentioned wanting to marry me and have children, it feels like those sentiments were insincere. I loved him deeply for 2 years, and now it feels as though he was deceiving me and providing empty reassurances. He has completely lost my trust, and I am unsure how to view our relationship now, considering he went from expressing such positive feelings to ending things unexpectedly without any opportunity for us to mend our issues. Everything seemed fine until he abruptly called it quits without prior discussion. I found it hard to end things myself because I was deeply attached to him, and even while crying over him, he remained the person I wanted by my side. My attachment to him became unhealthy, and I continued to seek his presence, despite recognizing that many aspects were not functioning, including his sensitivity and issues he should be addressing in therapy. Now, 1 month later, after becoming distant from him while I travel alone around the world, I find that, although the days leading up to and following the breakup were difficult, I am currently doing well. I still desire him in my life because I care for him deeply and want the best for him, but I recognize that he is not the right partner for me at this moment. I am beginning to regain my independence after being so closely connected for 2 years. When we communicate, he behaves as if nothing has changed, and the reasons he cites for wanting to miss me are the very things he previously mentioned as reasons for our split. While I still have love for him and consider him a friend, I think I am ready to explore relationships with other men while ensuring my boyfriend is okay, as he does not have many friends in his new city. The emotional turmoil and instability in our relationship have diminished my attraction to him. I now find myself more drawn to other men than to him, even attracted to qualities he possesses. This realization saddens me, and I feel guilty about it. Throughout this time, my reluctance to leave him, despite the pain he caused me especially that day he broke up with me, was profound. It was the worst pain I have experienced since my mother's passing, as I always told him that any breakup would feel akin to losing the most important person in my life. Now that I have had time apart from him, I see that I can live independently, and I find my attraction to him fading because our emotional connection is no longer the same. Instead, I am becoming more interested in other men. I want to be honest with my boyfriend about my feelings, yet I fear he will be heartbroken, especially now that he is alone in a new city and country, yearning for me. Recently, we learned that he underwent surgery to remove a mass from his lung that turned out to be cancerous, which devastated us both. However, after consulting with doctors, it seems it was detected early, and he is now cancer-free. I do not wish to add stress to his life since stress can exacerbate health issues, but I am also becoming impatient as my solo trip will conclude in 3 months, and I suspect I will regret not acting on my feelings for other men simply to avoid hurting him. However, it feels unjust to remain in a relationship where the trust, love, and understanding we built over the past 2 years have faded. What should I do? To summarize, my boyfriend of 2 years ended our relationship suddenly, only to regret it shortly thereafter. Our bond was strained due to poor communication, his difficulty accepting criticism, and his tendency to suppress emotions, largely stemming from his upbringing and newly diagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Although we attempted couples therapy, we struggled to fully reconcile before a planned long-distance separation. I was intensely dependent on him, but after a month of solo travel, I've come to realize that I can thrive independently. While I still harbor strong feelings for him, albeit platonically, I no longer view him as the right partner for me, at least not at present. I do see the possibility of a future together if we both grow individually, as we had discussed a life together. However, my attraction to him has waned due to emotional wounds inflicted by his actions, drawing my interest to other men. I wish to end things but am apprehensive about hurting him, especially given his recent health scare. Still, remaining in the relationship seems unfair to both of us. What should I do?